Hey guys, Akariss here, bringing you another Fire Emblem Heroes video. Today's video features Micaiah and the Resplendent Micaiah. So I'm actually going to use these Resplendent skins as a good way to do like a unit analysis. Ultimately, like the two stats and such don't make a huge difference, but it's a good way to like analyze maybe some of these older but very potentially good units to throw onto your competitive teams in Heroes. Hey guys, enjoy the video.
Let the lesson begin.
Hey guys, alright, so today's video features Micaiah. Now, because of the Resplendent Micaiah coming, I believe in about 2 weeks or so, this video can be used as sort of unit analysis of Micaiah in general. I don't believe there's a huge difference when it comes to like Resplendent stats and not, especially when you consider like merges kind of close that gap. And when it comes to like 5-star exclusives like this, I don't really assume that most people have someone like Micaiah at plus 10. So nonetheless, treat this like a unit analysis video, but to admire the brand new art and the potential of a unit like this if you've forgotten about her in your barracks or happen to get one from like a 4-star special in the case of Micaiah. Alright, so let's begin. If you don't know what Micaiah does, she's defined by her preference weapon, as listed below here. Basically, that weapon makes her very good as an anti-ranged unit. Not necessarily just against Cavs or armors, but anti-range in general, because she has great damage reduction from any ranged enemies, but has effective damage against armored and cavalry, and her stat spread, which we'll show in a moment, is very tuned to be able to do that. On top of that, her refine effect enabled her to get an additional attack and res, which she's already really good at, but also a follow-up, a guaranteed follow-up, which means she doesn't have to rely on something like QR, which is great. And that is a dual phase ability. It doesn't restrict her to just be enemy phase, in contrast to someone like Leon, who recently got a refine. Okay, so her actual stats are something like this. This is with Resplendent tacked on, so just minus 2 to everything if you just want to get her original stat spread, and this is actually not bad. It's pretty min-maxed when it comes to attack and res, which is great for something like Aether Raids, where you're going to run into mostly magical damage with a little bit of physical damage here and there. Micaiah is a very specialized unit and should be highly considered in throwing into a comp for Aether Raids. And of course this video will cover Aether Raids because if you're going to use like low merge units, it should probably be there. But she can definitely find a place in some PvE content where armor or cavalry units are giving you trouble. I personally use the bridal version of Micaiah myself as a counterpick unit against cavalries and armor units. Micaiah herself comes with this skill set. Nothing here is really worth talking about because you can get all those skills from the 3 and 4-star or Grail pool, but Sacrifice is cool-ish. It's a kind of heal harsh command, but it doesn't remove like panic or something. It's interesting, and you could technically do something with it on Aether Raids defense, but again, I think it's too gimmicky and not really worth talking about here. So yeah, she's a type of unit you just merge. I don't feel like any of those stats are worth skills or anything are really worth bothering for. So consider this a unit that is specialized, should be merged, and should be used. Okay, so let's jump into some builds. The first one that I would recommend, and I assume most people would have like either an unmerge or a +1, but if you have more merges, that's great. If you don't have the Resplendent, that's totally fine, because again, closing the gap between the Resplendent and the merge, the only situation that really matters is someone who has like a +10 Resplendent, where you're truly peaking the potential of Micaiah. But she's great even at low merge, even with no Resplendent stats. So I would consider this build a sort of like anti-range build, not necessarily focused on cav or armors, which you'll still run into plentiful, but this is more of an anti-range build. She has the ability to player phase snipe because of the auto follow-up on her weapon. She's tuning her defense stat with something like attack defense solo and removing any buffs and granting even more value out of her anti-range with this in defense 4. However, most of this is interchangeable. You could use stuff like Mystic Boost, maybe Attack Smoke in C, maybe a Stance 3 in the A skill, maybe even a solo. So don't take all these like skills as like must-haves, because every single skill will pretty much change her matchups depending on who exactly you're using her against. However, one thing I would highly recommend is Null Seed Disrupt. I feel Null Seed Disrupt is a core component of Micaiah personally. You could work without it, but I feel like specializing against anti like Cavs like healers and fire sweep weapons as Micaiah in just like a one-off position on your team is a great idea. Therefore, Null C is the highest recommendation that I would give you here for Micaiah. I feel that's great. You can pick it up from codes from Fallen Leon. Honestly, she's kind of better than Fallen Leon anyways. But that's a story for another time. Another build that I would recommend as well is something that just focuses on denying specials through the use of like a stance 3. Again, doesn't have to be sturdy stance 3, but I feel patching up her defense is great because you will run into bow units, and the common bow units are the green ones, which are Wrath and Python. A lot of people build those, so patching up her defense stat is a great idea to make those particular matchups more consistent. Using attack, you can secure one-shots, even on those units. Like, for example, Python doesn't have the greatest res stats, so with an extra boost in attack, you should secure that, but also reduce the damage she takes. Again, I feel like Mystic Boost is not a bad option as well. It will make healers basically tickle her, and will give her the sustain she desperately needs to be great. Okay. And another, I would call this more of a carry build, but it definitely will rely on you getting more merges or resplendent stats and such. So if you don't have that, then this is more oriented towards that. Remember, none of these builds take into effect any blessings, which will definitely make her even better. But yes, this is what I would call like the carry Micaiah build, and it is definitely a nice option. Again, Mystic Boost as a seal is a totally fine thing. I feel Null Follow-Up here is a great thing to use because if you think about it, she has an auto double in her weapon, and Null Follow-Up should guarantee that the auto double basically always goes off unless the enemy has Null Follow-Up. So if they're running stuff like Worry Fighter or denying, let's say, doubles on the unit that attacks them through various different weapons, Null Follow-Up plus Danny is a great combination as well. It also will stop plenty of other units that attack into her that have auto double effects. So I definitely am a fan of this. Now, one thing you'll notice is there's no close counter build or anything like that. And of course, I have the best partner that I would recommend for you to use if you really wanted to feel fully immersive in the Micaiah experience, which is no doubt that guy. Yes, Black Knight with near safe. If you want to go full immersion, credit to actually 1000. He's a Japanese YouTube streamer. I'll put his YouTube channel in the description below. That's such a cool idea. Basically, if there's a single unit that can beat the weapon triangle and can protect Micaiah against some annoying melee units that she may have some trouble with, well, Near Save, Slaying Edge, Black Luna, and the A and Seal are pretty interchangeable, but Special Fighter Black Luna plus Slaying Edge means you're going to kill a lot of stuff that want to attack into Micaiah in melee range. This isn't necessarily needed, but it's nice immersion, and it does work against teams that try to balance both physical and res hitting or range and such, because Micaiah's strength is range, not necessarily melee combat, which is why you won't see something like close counter in contrast. So that combination is cool, but let's actually talk about Micaiah herself and what the resplendent stats or potential of what she can do is here. So I'm going to jump into some simulations. So with simulations, that will be right here. Okay, so for just so you know what's going on here, I'm going to be using the double distant defense build because I feel that's okay. Again, some common threats that you run into like Python, Reinhardt, Dancing Sigurd, Veronica, and these are going to be some pretty high merge units. I'm talking like plus 10 stuff. I guess Sigurd might be plus 1 here or unmerged, not sure. But the two builds I'll use will be the Distant Defense 4 build, which will definitely improve her bulk, and the Sturdy Stance build, which will improve her attack power. This is without any buffs in terms of physical buffs or drives and such, which will even make her much better for contrast. So take these matchups as a sort of like just buff her up a little bit more, give her some more merges because this is all with plus 1, and she becomes even better. Okay, so the first thing we'll talk about here is the Distant Defense 4 variant, and the Distant Defense 4 variant now basically minimizes the amount of damage she takes, but will make it harder to secure kills. And this is very evident when you look at the Python builds there. One with Spendthrift, one with Fire Sweep. The Fire Sweep bow itself actually ends up hurting quite a bit because it gets a double off, and unfortunately because of that double, you have a Moon bow, and that cuts through a lot of the defenses. Of course, the other guys like Reinhardt, Sigurd, and Veronica are nearly, you know, they don't really harm her very much. The other build, though, the Sturdy Stance build, trades a bit of more damage taken, especially against enemies like Reinhardt, running like a +10 double death blow level attack res build. But it does mean you can actually secure kills against something like Python in one shot, so you don't get moonbowed. And you do still struggle against the Spendthrift variant, but again, a lot of this can be swinged with more merges, with more support, like if you have Plumeria with her weapon in effect, or just drive attacks and such. That will all swing it into Micaiah's favor. And because of that, Micaiah ends up being a great counter unit against some of these common units that you may run into in AR defense. I would recommend definitely using Micaiah in at least one of your 5 slots for a Aether Raids offense, if you have that available slot or if you have the unit. But this generally applies to every variant of Micaiah as well. The biggest difference between this version of Micaiah and all the other ones, Bridal, Brave, and such, is that this one, I guess the Dancer Micaiah could kind of do this, but I wouldn't recommend it. She's not as combat oriented, is the Null Sea Disrupt. That is what defines original Micaiah, plus her Refine definitely makes her stand out for that auto double effect, where the other ones might be missing more kills. With that being said though, guys, I hope you enjoyed this Micaiah unit analysis, and maybe you'll definitely consider using her, as she will be joining us as a Resplendent. Not me though, because I'm F2P by the way, but I think most people will enjoy not only the art, but definitely the unit itself, or you'll dig her out of the barracks and use her to great effect. Micaiah's cool, and so are you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and peace out.